Sometimes the greatest teacher is the one the world ignores. But what happens when a starving drifter walks into a luxury repair shop and claims he can fix a $200,000 Porsche in exchange for nothing more than a meal? The afternoon was loud inside Elite Auto Works, a repair shop famous for dealing with expensive cars. Tools clattered, wrenches struck metal, and engines roared in half-finished tests. At the center of the shop sat a Porsche 911, its hood open like a patient on an operating table. For 3 days, the mechanics had failed to find its fault. That's when the door opened and an unfamiliar figure stepped inside. His clothes were worn, his gray hair messy, his face tired, but his eyes carried a strange fire. He walked slowly, but with purpose, and the room immediately filled with laughter. "Hey, Grandpa, this isn't a soup kitchen," Ryan, the youngest mechanic, mocked, almost dropping his wrench from amusement. Elias, the shop's arrogant owner, didn't even look up from his paperwork. "Jake, call security. These people show up every day asking for money." But the man's calm voice cut through the noise. "I'm not asking for money. I can fix this Porsche for a meal." The entire workshop burst into laughter. Ryan slapped his thigh. Jake shook his head in disbelief, and Elias smirked. But Sarah, the only female mechanic, didn't laugh. She stayed in the back, watching carefully. Something in the stranger's voice, something in the way he stared at the exposed engine, made her pause. The others only saw a beggar. She saw someone who looked at machines with a surgeon's precision. "What's wrong with the car then, genius?" Elias asked, irritation dripping from his tone. The man tilted his head as Jake started the engine again. The sound was rough, cutting out at high revs. The man listened carefully, his eyes narrowing. Then he said, almost casually, "Direct injection system. Fuel pressure sensor is failing. That's why it stalls. Not mechanical, electronic." The laughter died instantly. Jake had been searching for exactly this problem for 3 long days. "How the hell do you know that just by listening?" Ryan asked, less mocking now, more curious. Elias tried to recover his arrogance. "Lucky guess. Anyone can make one." The stranger finally smiled, but it wasn't the smile of a fool. It was the smile of someone who knew too much. That sound happens only when the sensor sends inconsistent data. The engine cuts off fuel injection to protect itself. It's not luck. Sarah's curiosity deepened. No random beggar could explain complex electronic failures like that. She stepped closer, ignoring Elias's angry glare. "How do you know so much about Porsche systems?" The man hesitated for a long second, then gave a vague answer. "I've worked with sports cars before." Elias laughed mockingly. "Yeah, right, at the junkyard." More laughter followed, but Sarah noticed the flicker of pain in the man's eyes. That was not the look of someone making things up. That was the look of someone remembering a past he didn't want to reveal. Elias decided to humiliate him further. He grabbed his phone and said, "Fine, let's make this interesting. If you can prove your claim with the scanner, I'll give you $20 and a sandwich. But if you fail, you're out of here forever, and I'll film it for everyone online to see." The shop roared with approval. The man simply nodded. "Deal." Everyone crowded around as he approached the diagnostic scanner. Jake whispered to Ryan, loud enough to be heard, $20 says he doesn't even know how to turn it on." Elias held his phone steady, ready to record the humiliation. But then something unexpected happened. The man's fingers moved across the scanner like they belonged there. He navigated through complex menus most of the mechanics rarely touched. In seconds, the screen beeped and displayed P0294, fuel pressure sensor out of range. Silence, pure silence. Jake's face drained of color as he double-checked. That's correct. 3 days of searching, solved in 5 minutes. Elias quickly lowered his phone, realizing he wouldn't get the video he had wanted. Beginner's luck, he muttered. But the stranger's smile widened. Want me to explain why this specific sensor fails in the— Whoever this man was, he wasn't ordinary. As if the Porsche revelation wasn't enough, the stranger turned toward a dusty BMW X5 sitting in the corner. That car. You told the customer it needs a new engine, right? Elias stiffened. The man continued. It's not the engine. It's the high-pressure fuel pump. A $1,200 fix. You quoted him 15 grand. Ryan's jaw dropped. Jake rushed to check, ran another test, and confirmed it. The stranger was right again. The workshop filled with a stunned silence. Sarah's instincts screamed louder now. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't luck. This was expertise. But from where? Elias's frustration grew. Enough of your parlor tricks. This is a real shop, not a stage. The man's calm eyes met his. Want to see a real trick? He walked toward the BMW, pointed to exact spots of wear, corrosion, and fuel line stress, explaining each detail like he had lived inside the machine itself. Even Jake, with 20 years of experience, couldn't deny it. He's right. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The image of the stranger, his precision, his calm authority, the sadness hidden in his eyes, haunted her. Early the next morning, she searched online. She typed the exact terms he had used: Porsche 911 fuel sensor failure, 2011 to 2015. The results stunned her. These weren't terms from casual forums. They were technical notes discussed only by engineers and professional drivers. Digging deeper, she stumbled upon a user from 2007 on a motorsports forum. The username was Dark Horse Racing. The posts contained the same level of technical detail the stranger had spoken with, predicting problems years before those models even released. She whispered to herself, "Who are you?" When she arrived at the shop, Ryan found her glued to the computer. "Still thinking about that guy?" he teased. Sarah turned the screen toward him. "Look at this. The things he said yesterday, they're here, but posted 15 years ago." Ryan rolled his eyes. "So what? Anyone can read stuff online." Sarah shook her head. He didn't read it. He knew it. He navigated that scanner like it was an extension of his hands. That's not from Google. That's from experience. Before Elias could shut down the conversation, the workshop door opened again. The stranger returned. But this time, he wasn't alone. A sophisticated woman in her 50s walked beside him. She introduced herself, Catherine Morrison, owner of a McLaren 720S. Elias turned pale. That car had been his most embarrassing failure. No shop in the city could fix it, and Catherine's patience had already run thin. Catherine explained, "I met this gentleman last night. When I mentioned my McLaren, he told me the exact cause of the failure. I decided to bring him here myself." Elias forced a laugh. "And what did he say the problem was?" The man calmly answered, "Hybrid control module conflict. The 2019 McLaren models have a hidden flaw where the software managing the electric motor clashes with the combustion system. That's why it fails." Sarah's hands flew across her keyboard, and she found a confidential McLaren technical bulletin saying exactly that. Information no outsider should know. Jake's jaw tightened. "How do you know that?" The man gave the same evasive reply as before. I've worked with performance cars in many places. Catherine wasn't in the mood for excuses. If your shop won't let him fix it, I'll take my business elsewhere. Elias panicked. Losing such a wealthy client would be disastrous. The stranger seized the moment. If I fix her McLaren, you give me a real chance to work. Not for a sandwich, but for a job. If I fail, I'll walk away forever, and you can film it. The challenge hung heavy in the air. Elias weighed the risks. If the stranger failed, he'd be humiliated in front of Catherine. If he succeeded, well, Elias didn't even want to think about that. Finally, he growled, "Fine, 2 hours. That's all you get." The man approached the McLaren with reverence, as if reuniting with an old friend. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with something Sarah couldn't yet name. Contained emotion. For 2 hours, the workshop watched in silence as he worked with surgical precision, tracing wires, running diagnostics, making adjustments. When he finally looked up, his eyes shone with quiet triumph. Done. Catherine slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The McLaren purred, smooth, powerful, alive. Tears welled in her eyes. They told me it was impossible. 3 dealerships said the entire module needed replacement. $80,000. And you fixed it. Elias's face turned ashen. Ryan and Jake stood speechless. But Sarah's suspicions hardened into certainty. This man was far more than he appeared. After refusing payment, the stranger prepared to leave. Sarah chased after him. "Wait," she called, her voice trembling. He stopped, but didn't turn fully. "You're not an ordinary mechanic, are you?" He stood silent for several seconds. Finally, in a voice heavy with pain, he said, "I've been many things, but never ordinary." Sarah pressed. "Then who were you?" When he turned, for the first time she saw it. Beneath the unkempt beard and worn clothes, she saw the shadow of greatness. He spoke softly, almost like a confession. "I was someone who believed speed could cure pain, until I learned some wounds never heal by running from them." He walked away, shoulders hunched, like a man carrying an invisible burden too heavy for words. That night, Sarah couldn't stop herself. She kept digging. When dawn broke, she found the answer. She whispered the name in shock. David Williams, 3-time Formula One world champion, known as the Ghost. The photos matched. The same face, younger, celebrated, drowning in champagne and trophies. The same man who yesterday had been mocked for a sandwich. Then she found the tragedy. In 2009, a horrific crash in Monaco. He survived, but his 8-year-old daughter, watching from the stands, died of a heart attack from the shock. His wife left him soon after. His life unraveled, and the legend vanished. Sarah sat frozen, realizing the beggar who had been laughed out of the shop was once a man who commanded machines at 300 kilometers per hour, who had tasted glory and endured unthinkable loss. He wasn't just fixing cars. He was paying penance for a past too heavy to forget. And the men who mocked him, they had no idea they had witnessed not a trick, but the faint echo of a fallen legend, one who had already lost everything once, and yet still carried the strength to heal what others believed was broken.